right? So you slapped Spiderman in the face and worked him up and brought him into the now. You made a huge dent in how the comic book companies treat their artists, and you gave shunned artists a place to really shine. Your next step was to kick the toy industry in the nuts and really let go of that.
Right.
And that's one of my favourite parts about everything you've ever done is the toys you do. Just the dedication to quality and accuracy and detail and all that sort of stuff. Were you frustrated by the toys that were coming out? Is that why you did it, or were you just...
What ended up happening with the toys was that, I mean, they came, when they saw that Spawn, the comic book, was #1, they came at me. So they all went, oh my gosh, it's out selling Superman and Batman and X-Men and Spiderman, and we make toys of all that, so this must be a great toy property. And I could tell they hadn't really read the book, because I had to remind them it was a guy from the pit of hell. Didn't seem like a property that they should want. Once they sort of figured that out, I got a quick sense that the big public companies, and I understand why now, is that they have formulas, and they were just going to take them, put them in their formula,
Right.
make traditional toys, put it in traditional marketing, traditional places, and put it out there. Where my conversation with them was the opposite. I go, I think you need to do a non-traditional toy, and need to think outside the box with it a little bit. And, oh, by the way, I think you need to put it in stores that are not necessarily your normal stores, because I think it's going to be a different audience, an older audience. And I very quickly saw that wasn't going to happen. You could just tell by the look on their face. So the answer was, just like with starting Image Comic Books, at some point you either accept their terms or you basically do it on your own.
Play by your own rules.
And I was lucky enough to have had the success with Spider-Man and now Spawn, that I had, some money in the bank that I could then go, instead of going buy a fancy car and sort of goofy stuff, I just put it into companies and my own, and we made some plastic goods. And I mean, if you look at those early toys, we were winning awards, and they're kind of silly now. I mean, but they actually raised the bar. I mean, when I look, I go, wow, that's terrible. But it just shows you where the standard was, that was revolutionary, because now 5 years later we were doing stuff with toys that blew that, even my own stuff, sort of out of the water. We had a big learning curve, but the formula that I took to the toys was the same that I took in comic books and pretty much everything else. I'm not here when I start these businesses to reinvent anything. I'm not that smart, but where I've had a lot of success is looking at stuff that exists and then just putting a different paint job on it. And going, wow, you know what, that Cadillac, grandpas drive it, but if you put a lot of chrome on it and put some flames on it, you could get a 20-year-old to drive it, and put some big tires on it, you could get a 20-year-old to drive that car, even though it's a Cadillac now. So to me, it was, when we went and started Image, it was like, how do we bring in computer coloring on a regular basis? How do we upgrade the paper? I mean, it's still words and pictures, it was still comic books, still superhero stuff. But how do we just slick it up a little bit? And for the toys, it was the same way. I go, if they're going to do monsters, then let's really do monsters. And if they're going to do texture, then let's really do texture. And if we're gonna do this, then let's just do it right. And luckily, I guess I just have been fortunate to sort of see things that to me are a little bit vanilla, and go, why has nobody put just a little bit of chocolate sauce on that, just to make that sundae taste a little bit better? And that's all I've done. I've just gone to all these industries and just sort of added a little bit of a spice to all of them, and it ends up sort of coming back, and people say a lot of kind words about me. And I've always said the same thing, that they go, oh, Todd, you're a genius, and you're this, and you're that, and I appreciate all of it, and I usually don't argue with them. But the reality of it is, everything I've done, somebody could have done it 20 years ago, 30. I don't get it. I go. The question isn't why do I do it? The question is, why did they never do it? That's always struck me as way odder, especially in the toy industry, because as I keep telling people, clay has no. It can't do anything but go in the shape that we put it in. So it could have gone into any shape. We just, as a toy industry, put it into simple, bland shapes. And I took the same clay and put it into more complicated shapes. There was nothing more sophisticated than that. It was still the same clay they'd been using for 40 years. So luckily, they had been doing it sort of mediocre for a long, that makes my step up look fantastic to people, and we get a lot of accolades, and I've been able to keep it going since.
With the toy making, did you have a lot of direct input into the design of the toys? Did you just pass them a sketch and go do it like that, or did you get your hands on the clay? Or?
You know what, I'm not a sculptor, but it doesn't, you know, as a director of a movie, doesn't mean you have to be an actor to basically get the best performance out of people. I understood all the different steps along the way, and there's about 8 or 9 of them, and I have to sign off on all 8 or 9 of them. So they don't just get, I don't just give them something and hope it turns out at the end. Quite the opposite. I'm actually fairly anal about it.
Back to that control freak thing.
Yeah, and to the point that we actually broke down. We used to do the sculpting in sort of one stage, and then I'd made so many revisions that we actually started a program where I was doing it in 2 stages. One was just what we call the pink clay, which was just get it right to me naked. And the reason I wanted that was they were doing some nice detail work and some nice sort of additions to it, but the pose wasn't right, or the anatomy wasn't right. And so to correct it, all of that work that they put on it, they had to scrap it because the arm's wrong. So I got to the point where I go, guys, get me the body's naked. I don't care if it's a sports figure, I don't care if it's a movie star or a musician or a monster. Get me the body language first, and once I sign off on that, now we can go to detail. And then that's a whole nother set of comments that are going to come with it. But at least we're not wasting time. You're not doing fur, and I'm telling you, you got the fur wrong on the Wolfman. You know, so we'll just take it one at a time. So we just created our own process, and then we had to go over to China and teach them, literally teach them how to make the toys that I wanted to make, because they, as you might imagine, have been trained since the beginning of time that when you get paid to build a new toy for a company, it better look new. Not a big stretch on their part. People have been given them millions of dollars to go, we want new toys. We want them to look new when people come and buy it. I had sort of a different approach, that I wanted guys that look like they'd been alive for a while, or the monsters that have lived in the forest for a while,
Right.
or the baseball player to look like he'd been playing for 2 hours and not the beginning of the game. A warrior that was 3 hours into his battle, not at the beginning of the battle. And so that meant that I wanted them to actually look imperfect, and it took a while for the factories to sort of they thought that if they didn't make them brand new shiny, I wouldn't be happy and I wouldn't pay them. And I had to convince them that the less new they looked, the better that it would be for me, and the more work they would get. And eventually we were able to convince them.